Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've recorded meetings and conventions here in Southern California since 1998. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994, and I got sober in a small town called Santa Maria. I moved to Los Angeles when I had 5 years sober and started recording meetings shortly after I got here. In 2013, I started recording conventions. So please enjoy the channel. Please like and subscribe. It helps me out a lot. Just click right down there. Thank you.
Now it is time to introduce our main speaker for tonight, Frank C.
Hi everybody, I'm Frank Cherry and I'm an alcoholic. I want to thank Jerry for asking me to come and share here. It's an honor and it is a privilege to be able to participate, especially in this meeting that's been so important to me throughout my sobriety. I want to thank Coco. I want to thank Alan. And there's a guy out there in the parking lot, his name's Cyril. I want to thank him. And I'm the guy that was in the driveway here trying to mow everybody down before the meeting. So if you got a resentment, keep coming back, you know. I say it's an honor and a privilege to be asked to do this. My sponsor's always quick to remind me that speaking is probably the least significant commitment I could have in AA. And I think what he means by that is that, you know, to be asked to come here and run my mouth about me for a half an hour and then, you know, disappear. It's like, what kind of commitment is that? You know, that'll get you drunk. And it's the commitments that I've had in AA, or like the ones back there where they have to clean up that kitchen or set up the food beforehand or get this literature set up out here. The guy that was Cyril, like out there in the parking lot greeting me, the commitments that keep me coming back every week, that I have to do week after week, that reduce my isolation even when I don't feel like being there. That's the stuff that's kept me sober. And it is an honor and a privilege to participate in Alcoholics Anonymous on any level for me, but especially be asked to speak. It is a true honor. I was a useless human being when I got to AA. I always like to describe it as a dog on a freeway. I had no business being there. The world was a very hostile place. And I was out to get mine before you took it away from me. There was no love in the world I was in. I was terrified. I was in the way. And I had nothing to give. If I had had anything, I wouldn't have been interested in giving it. That was the world I lived in. And that renders one useless. Anything that I see myself to be, anything that I have that's of any value, but most especially anything that I do that's of any use to another human being, any use I have on this planet, is a result of Alcoholics Anonymous in my life. And that's a debt I'll never pay back. My sobriety date is December 20th, 1982. That's a long time between drinks. And I have an 18-year-old son. So I'm 22, he's 18. I got more time than him. And it was not in the cards for me to be a parent. I came here to learn how not to fall down on street corners and knock teeth out of my head anymore. I literally came here to learn how to drink again. I did not come here to learn how to be an adequate parent. So I'm far overpaid with this thing. You know, when my son was about 4 years old, I got divorced from his mom, and he used to come see me on the weekends. And we had this thing on Saturday mornings where I'd make pancakes. I got pretty good at making pancakes. And he'd watch Saturday morning cartoons. He lived in the land of Looney Tunes, you know. And he used to love the Roadrunner. There was his favorite cartoon, you know, the Roadrunner, beep beep, the thing. And I was watching that one Saturday and I thought, this is, you know, one of us must have written this thing, you know, because this is like this Wile E. Coyote guy. I really related to him. And I thought there's got to be an episode of the Roadrunner way back early on where he actually caught a Roadrunner, you know, and he ate this bird. And it fixed him. It was a spiritual experience, man. It made him complete and whole and happy and joyous and free. And it set him free. And so he spends the rest of his life buying Acme rockets and climbing on them and running himself in the side of mountains and falling 300 feet to his death just to get one more bite of Roadrunner, you know? It's like, yeah, you know, it's like, that's my story, man. And I so relate to that, you know? So, you know, and I suppose somewhere at the end of it, he goes to Roadrunner Anonymous or something, you know, and walks hand in hand with them into the sunset or something, because he gets complete, you know, and, you know, that's just what this thing's done for me. Let's see. I'm from Beaumont, Texas originally. That's 90 miles east of Houston. It's about 5 miles west of Louisiana state line. It's down in the swamp. And the significance of that is when I was a kid in Texas, I was 14 in 1967. That makes me, I think, 51 years old, so you don't have to think about that anymore. And I want to welcome, by the way, Ernie from Jersey. You still here? All right, Ernie, how much time you got? Day and a half. Oh, man. You can't applaud a day and a half. That's hard, isn't it? Day and a half's a long time, man. That makes 20 years look like a walk in the park. Or actually, it's the way around. 22 years make that. A day and a half. Welcome, Ernie. You're very welcome here. Welcome to all the newcomers and people from out of town. And I want to say happy birthday to the birthday people. I love the number of birthdays that are here every week, and I always get some. It feels like I get an entire meeting in before I speak. So I want to say that. I want to be sure to mention that. Anyway, back to Beaumont, Texas. Okay, I was 14. And I got a driver's license in Texas when you're 14, but you can't drink till you're 21. In Louisiana, you can't drive till you're 18, but you can drink at 18. So if you're old enough to drive in Louisiana, you're old enough to drink when I was a kid. And gee whiz, that's an alcoholic bottle of water there. He said there's a bottle of water up behind the thing. This is like, okay. I'm not going to miss that, Alan. Thank you. But when I was a kid at 14, I could drive over to Louisiana state line, and they wouldn't even check your ID if you were driving a car and looked comfortable. And so I ran with these guys. I had a '58 Chevy Delray, which was like a tank of a car. It's a huge car. And my friends were all like older than me. They were 16 to 18 years old. And a couple of them were going to Nam that year, and I thought I was so cool because I was the runt of the litter, but I had this car, so I got to hang with them. And there were 6 of them and 1 of me. We called ourselves the Magnificent 7. And we used to pile in that car on the weekends, and we'd drive 5 miles over the Louisiana state line. First town over, it's on I-10, as a matter of fact. You go down Interstate 10 far enough, and it ends up in Vinton, Louisiana. And the first exit there's a little Jack's Packet liquor store. And you pull into this oyster shell driveway, and it's like a Polaroid in my head. It's like my summer of love, you know? And you pull around back of this liquor store, and there's this guy weighs about 300 pounds with no hair and a cigar hanging out of his mouth, and he sticks his head out a drive-up window, just like going to a Jack in the Box. And he says, "Hey, boys, what can I do for you?" And we'd buy this Boone's Farm strawberry wine and we get Boone's Farm apple wine. Now my favorite was for $1.59. You could get a gallon, big green gallon bottle, which I could draw you a picture of this day. Had a little hula girl on the label. She'd be dancing a hula, looked sexy. And it was called Bally High Wine. Bally High Wine. For $1.59, you get a gallon of it. And I think as a marketing ploy, that's how, you know, you drink this, and that's how you say very high. You know, I'm Bally High, you know. You want to be Bally High? We like to be Bally High, you know. But truly, I remember that so well because of what it did for me. And in all of that was like my first episode of Roadrunner. It was like Wiley eating his, you know, finally catching a Roadrunner and eating it and getting fixed. And we'd have enough money left over to get like one guy into the Showtown USA drive-in movie theater. And we'd pile 6 guys in the trunk of this Chevy. And there would be this one 14-year-old kid, and the rear end's dragging on the ground, making sparks. And we pull up the ticket window, and there'd be all this booze in the back seat, you know. And that ticket lady, I can remember the adrenaline of it and the excitement of it. The first 11 words, of the 12th step, that was read tonight during chapter 5. The first 11 words are, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. It is the only thing we're working for. It was explained to me by my sponsor that this is the one thing I'm looking for. It's not just a result of the steps, it's the result of the steps. And the truth is all my life, I have craved a spiritual experience. That's what Bally High Wine did for me. It set me free. It made me complete. It fixed everything. And it did it really well, you know. And that was my summer of love. That's where it started, in Beaumont, Texas. Problem is Bally High Wine didn't work that good for that long. And so I have to keep chasing bigger and better highs, you know. And when I was 19 years old, I moved to New York City. I took a job driving taxi there, worked my way, and I used to have this great setup where I could deal drugs out of the back of this cab in the Central Park and work at night. And like I said, just chasing bigger and better highs. I come from like the Brady bunch. My dad was dean of engineering at the local university in Texas. It was like the guy who took the birthday tonight. I mean, the top of the Bible Belt, South Carolina, the base of it is Texas-Louisiana border. And there's 2 things in Texas. There's football and Jesus, in that order. And my sister was a valedictorian of high school. My mother teaches the same Sunday school class to this day. She's 85 years old. And to this day, they wonder what the hell happened to me. And I never related to those people. I felt like a stranger to them. I thought it was an accident. I was convinced at one point in my childhood that I was adopted. And when I got to AA, I went back during working the steps and figured out that I was an 8th Cherokee and my last name's Irish. So nobody ever told me I shouldn't drink, you know. But it's a lethal combination with Bally High Wine. And so what happened was when I was 21, my dad died, and I hadn't talked to him for 2 years. And so that was not supposed to be the end of that story. I went home, buried my father. When I was 25, my sister was on a Fulbright scholarship to the University of Cologne in Germany, and she had a 2-year-old son. And this was my nephew, and it was the only thing in my life that didn't look like that hostile world I lived in. And it was the only hope, only kind of love in my life. This kid thought I was great. He had a much higher esteem of me than I did for myself. And when she was 31, I was 25. She got a type C hepatitis. I didn't know what it was back then. and she got an aneurysm in her brain. She was in a coma, and we had to take her off life support, and she died. And I was 25. Went home, buried my sister, held her kid in my arms while my mother was at that funeral. I watched her bury her little girl, and I thought, if there's a God, I want nothing to do with him. Because if anybody's supposed to be dead in this thing, it was me and not her. At that point, I had a pretty strong heroin habit. I went back to New York City chasing bigger and better highs. But I always went back. It was like the guy that shared Jack and crack. I like that. Jack Daniels was my drug of choice, I suppose. If I had money and could spend it on something, that'd probably be the first thing I'd buy. And when I was in 1980, there was a big article in Time magazine that I saw in New York about this comedian, Richard Pryor, had set himself on fire running down Ventura Boulevard, freebasing cocaine. Now, if you're Wile E. Coyote, this looks like a great idea, you know? So, in 1980, I came out here, and I had a job. I got a job to make a lot of money in a little bit of time in Los Angeles, living in New York. And in short order, in about 6 months, I was, I had made a bunch of money on this job and was in thousands of dollars worth of debt. And it was a week before Thanksgiving in 1982. During the last 2 years of my drinking, I was a complete blackout drinker. Every time I drank, I would lose 3, 4, 5 days of my life. And it didn't matter what else I was doing when I drank, and I drank for a click. There used to be this I don't know if you've ever seen it or not. You're familiar? No, everything I say is dating myself. So, but Cat on a Hot Tin Roof was this this movie that Paul Newman was in with Elizabeth Taylor, and I remember seeing that at Showtown USA Drive-In when I was a kid and being moved by it, because he has this birthday party he's got to go to, and his wife's trying to get him to go down to the birthday party, and he says, "I can't go, Maggie, till I get this click. I got to get this click." And he's drinking, waiting for this click, and every time I got the click, I'd be in a blackout. I wouldn't remember the click, And so, this was obviously not working. I remember one time I came to in Scottsdale, Arizona. Came out of a blackout, walking down a street at Old Scottsdale. Do not know to this day how I got there. And it was, what happened was, it was a week before Thanksgiving in 1982. A buddy of mine was coming over. We were going to get ready to go to this party that night. And I don't know about you, but when we got ready to go to a party, it'd take a few hours, And because we got to get sufficiently numb to walk out the door. All I've ever wanted was out, and yet I wanted to go to the party with him, so he brought some of the smoke, and at the time I didn't have any money, and the girl I was living with was out of town, and all she had in the place was a bottle of Tanqueray gin. Now, I hated gin, but that's all she had, and this guy told me that's what they made martinis with. So I said, well, I'll make us a couple of martinis, And I poured like 2 8-ounce water glasses full of this gin, set it down. The next thing I know, that was a Thursday. It was Monday morning, 10 a.m. I'm lying face down on the southeast corner of Hollywood and Vine. My hand has got a scar on it to this day where I'd fallen down. My face was stuck to the sidewalk. People were walking over me and looking at me like I used to look at bums on the subway in New York. And I have no idea what had happened during those 4 days. And like I say, I felt like that dog on a freeway, Now, what happened next, I look back, and I got to know, if you're new here, anything I say about any of this is in hindsight. If you want to know what's going on with me this week, ask me next week. Because, I don't really know right now. But when I look back, as the result of these steps, and as a result of the book teaching me these steps, I can work these steps and start to get clear on what's going on right now. But it takes a while. And so when I look back on this and tell you this story, this is in hindsight. I got 20/20 hindsight. But I didn't know that's what was going on at the time. But I look back on that morning coming to on that street corner, and that was the beginning of my bottom. Now, what happens to me around here, because I've hit many, many bottoms since then, thank God. And it's kind of like when I was drinking in New York, I used to get on this late night subway. I drove cab in South Bronx and I lived down in the West Village. And I'd get on this subway and having drank or being too screwed up at night, sometimes I'd pass out on the subway. And you get on the express train, next thing you know, you're in Brooklyn, and it's like, you know, you don't even want to be there. And, or you get to the end of the line, you know, and they'd have to wake you up. And every 30 seconds or so, this train stops and the doors open. And you got about 5 seconds to jump off. And then the doors close and it takes off, keeps going downtown. And I look back on that morning and I realized that if you get close enough, it's as if that train had stopped for me and the doors were open for a few seconds. And if you get close enough to those doors, you won't have to jump. If you're new here and you're relating to anything I'm talking about, God will push you off. But you just got to get real close to the doors. And what happened was that morning was, I don't know where this came from. It wasn't like a cognizant thought. I was terrified. I was trying to get myself together on that southeast corner. I had this old denim jacket on, probably hadn't been off for a couple of years. I reached in the pockets, had 37 cents in one pocket, and a piece of legal paper, a little torn off piece of yellow paper from a legal pad in the other, and it had this guy's name on it and a phone number. It said Michael. Now I remembered seeing this guy a couple of months before at another party I'd blacked out at. We were at this bar and he had been drinking this Perrier. And I said, and I used to drink with this guy, I used to party with this guy, I knew this guy really well. And I thought he used to be a lot of fun, this guy, you know. So I said, let me buy you a drink. You don't have to drink the Perrier. He says, no, no, no. He said, I hadn't had a drink in a year and a half. I said, that's terrible, man. Let me get you a drink. You don't have to do that to yourself. Who the hell would do that to themselves? You're at a bar here. He says, no, no, no. I've been going to AA. Well, that was the end of that conversation that evening. And so I don't know what happened, but somewhere in my blackout that night, he had given me this phone number, slipped it in my pocket. And it was there that morning with this 37 cents in my pocket, and there was a payphone hanging right there where there's still a novelty shop on the southeast corner down there. And like I say, you get close enough to the doors and something will happen that God will push you off. And it was just like without a thought, I picked up that phone, I stuck a quarter in it, and I called that number. And he picked up the phone immediately. He recognized who I was, which looking back is kind of amazing to me. And what I said to him was like a wake-up call. It was like a moment of clarity. He says, hey, Frank, yeah, are you all right? And I said, Michael, I need a drink, but I don't want to black out today. I don't want to get drunk today. And I didn't even think about having said that, but I thought, this is the situation. This is a problem, you know? And he said, well, where are you? And I told him in what must have been about 20 minutes, but felt like 2, he comes tooling up, he throws open his door, he says, get in, we're going to go to one of these meetings. He took me to a noon Architects of Adversity meeting at West Hollywood Park on a Monday. Now, every time I say that, especially in LA County, I get that reaction, you know? Everybody go, oh. Let me tell you something, man. These people saved my life. I thought, first off, this guy must have been the president of the group, you know? Because if you're new and you want to get a lot of, you know, if you want to get a lot of attention in AA meetings, show up looking like a newcomer. Right, Ernie? Oh, man. And I swear to God, I thought that this guy must be the president of AA, you know, because everybody seemed to know him. Now, I'm a very vain person. And I had blood on my face, blood on my hands. I had holes in my jeans. They were not a fashion statement. I had fallen down on the, you know, sleeping on the sidewalk. And this was the last thing I needed to see. And it felt like there could have been 40, 50 people. It felt like 500 to me. And they all seemed to know my friend Michael. And I remember walking up there and they're going, Michael, good to see you, man. And he had this regular seat. They all knew where he sat. And he said, your friend Michael always sits here. Why don't you sit here next to him? And it's great to meet you, and we welcome you. Now, if you're a dog on a freeway, and people, how would you approach an animal like that? If you have anything but truth or sincerity in your intentions, that dog is going to bolt and run like a rabbit. So these people, I would look them square in the eye. I remember looking back on this. I was so angry. I was so terrified. And they would look at me and they'd say, we're glad you're here. We love you, friend Michael. He always sits there. What do you want in your coffee? And I couldn't blow holes in it. It seemed like they were telling me the truth. I still didn't trust it, but it was enough. I was getting impressed, And then I asked him if he could spot me a cup of coffee. He said it's for free. And then I was really impressed. But he kids me to this day. I'm going to give him a cake for 25 years on April 1st. And every year we have to hear that story about how he thinks it's the funniest thing in the world, about how I asked him for money for a cup of coffee at an AA meeting. But anyway, and I mean, who knew? In the world I lived in, there was nothing for free and for fun, And at that meeting, when it was over, there was a guy with a three-piece suit, Brooks Brothers suit. His name was Bob Burke. He had a red carnation in his lapel. He comes walking up to me. He was driving like this beautiful BMW out in a parking lot. He looked like a narc to me. I thought, who the hell is this guy? What does he want? He says, nice to meet you. I'm Bob. I'm a friend of your friend Michael's. We're really glad you're here. Now, do you know when your next meeting is? There are others? I didn't know. I really didn't know. He says, yeah. He says, there's one at 7:30 tonight on Monday nights right next to the old Rodeo meeting. There used to be this great meeting called the Chicago Group on Camden and Santa Monica. He says, 7:30 tonight, your friend Michael and myself and all these guys are going to be over there. Why don't you meet us there 7:30 tonight? And I said, well, let me check my calendar. And that's a joke. Obviously not. I had nothing going on. And he says, that's great, we'll see you over there. And he's walking to go out the door, and as if he'd forgotten something, he snaps his fingers, and I remember it like a Polaroid. He turns to me and he goes, wait a second. I thought he'd forgotten something. He says, are you going to drink between now, and this is about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, between now and 7:30 tonight? And I guess I took too long answering that question. Because this guy goes, and he gets like 5 or 6 guys that I never met before in my life, and he takes my friend Michael, and we go to the Figueroa coffee shop, and he sets me on the inside of the booth where I can't get out, and there's this signal going on. For the next 4 hours, they're buying me cigarettes and coffee, and some other guy comes in that I never met before in my life. I'm Joe, nice to meet you, and I was like exhausted, and they dragged me to that 7:30 meeting that night. Next thing I remember clearly, because these are all these little events, you look back and having had a spiritual awakening. There's a psychic change that goes on here, and there are certain events that are important. I could tell you, I could write a book about the 37 seconds it took me to pull my son from his mother when he was born. And this is probably a more significant spiritual experience to me, this thing that happened to me. Because I look back and I realize it's become clearer and clearer every day. But what happened was my friend Michael shaking me awake. I slept on his couch that night, and it's the next day, it's Tuesday. And he throws me in the car and we're driving, and he said this so flippant, like he was just trying to make conversation. He says, you called me about 10 o'clock yesterday morning, and I know you didn't drink between those 2 meetings yesterday. And I'm pretty sure you've been passed out on my couch since then. And he says, now it's noon, it's 11 o'clock, we're going to another one of these meetings. It means you got a day, man. Now, I couldn't think since 1967 at Showtown USA Drive-In with Bally High Wine, going 24 hours conscious, without anything except cigarettes to turn my volume knob down. And that scared me and impressed me all at the same time. It was explained later to me that this word conscious is a Latin word that breaks down to mean with truth. Con is with, and just is like science, or sciore, which is truth in Latin. With truth. I had hung with my truth for 24 hours. Conscious. Now, if you're a day and a half, just ask Ernie, he don't want to hang with his truth. I mean, truth, when I was new, was painful. Today, it's the only place to be. I love my truth. So that's why 22 years of walk in the park. But looking back, I see this process, and when we pulled up to that meeting, that architects meeting on that Tuesday, and I walked up there were people there that had been there the day before, and they recognized me. And it was as if they knew I had been conscious for a day. You didn't have to tell them. And they were happy to see me. They were glad I'd come back there. Really glad. And I tell you, I look back and I realized that whatever self-esteem, it was like I had been of that much use to these people. I had somehow been of some kind of service to them simply by showing up conscious on that second architects meeting. It was as if it was, it was like some piece of truth in my life. It was like a feeling I hadn't had for 20 years. And it scared me and impressed me all at the same time. And it kept me coming back. And slowly, that's how this thing has kind of worked for me, and participating with it. You heard it in the birthdays tonight. The answer is in the steps. The steps are given to me by the book. It took me 2.5 years to get a big book and read it. But the fellowship forced that on me. And the fellowship is what brought me the program through the book, which has the steps in it, which create this psychic change that can really change me. It's changed me. It's a fascinating thing to me. I have seen prints of guys with sponsors that worked the steps, that had commitments, that had a lot of time, that were very good friends of mine. They're not here today. They're dead from this thing. I am clear about the severe nature of my disease, my hopeless state of mind and body. The other side of the coin is that the man I am today and the things that I did today, to go from where I was to this reality in the same lifetime, is fascinating to me. It's as if Wile E. Coyote doesn't want a roadrunner. It's bizarre. It's like, how the hell did that happen? And it's possible. And I look back on it and it fascinates me. It's probably one of the reasons that I get, that I love to speak a lot, because it's like it's exciting to me. Okay, I'll tell you this story real quick. I'm almost out of time. There was a guy named Irv Nemi. When I had 90 days, this guy, Irv, got sober with like Jesus or something. He was like, he had over 30 years when I had 90 days. And he used to go to this Wednesday Gower meeting at noon on Wednesdays at Yucca and Gower. And he sat on the front right of that meeting every week. And it was this huge meeting, as many people as here tonight. And they used to give chips there, and I was supposed to show up and take a 90-day chip. So I got there early to save a seat. Now, I'd never talked to Irv. I had talked to guys who talked to guys who talked to Irv. You know what I mean? And it was still wanted nothing to do with this God thing. But the closest I could come to God at that point was I had a lot of respect for the fellowship and what it was doing for me. And I knew who that guy was. And I got there early, and he was walking one way, I was walking the other. And he says, "Hey, how you doing?" Now, if God stops and asks you how you doing, You know, it was like, I couldn't believe the guy, he like stopped for a second and stared at me. And I thought, I got an opportunity here. And I didn't know this guy, but I knew who he was. And I said, you know, I'm terrible. I'm pathetic. He said, excuse me? I said, man, I've been sleeping on my friend's couch for 90 days. I am in thousands of dollars worth of debt to the wrong people. I used to bartend and deal drugs, and I can't do that anymore. And I can't find my car. I still got a car, but I don't know where I left it. My girlfriend's got the keys to it, and she won't answer the phone or pick up my phone. I've been going to these stupid meetings for 90 days, day in, day out, and nothing's getting any better, and I can't sleep good on this couch. My ass is falling off, and I'm pathetic. How are you? And he says, it's like he didn't even look at me. He's looking straight to the back of the room. He says, you know that guy back there? His name's Jeff. And I said, no, what's up? He says, Jeff has to put out, this guy had about a 2-foot stack of ashtrays. So he's got to put all these ashtrays out before this meeting starts. Why don't you go help Jeff put out them ashtrays? Now let's review this for a second. You know, but you know what it was? Because of who he was to me and who you were to me, there was no way. I was not happy about that suggestion. I felt like it was proof to me that these guys don't care. And I finally caught him on something. But because of who he was, there was no way I was not going to let him see me turn around and get them ashtrays. So I went over there and I thought, he's going to see me do this. And I went over there and I said, okay, I'm supposed to help you with these ashtrays. And he says, well, get some more out of the kitchen. They're in the back. This is back when people smoked in meetings. I went back to the kitchen. There was a guy back there with this big old army jacket on, and he had a purple Duncan butterfly yo-yo. Now, when I was 12 years old in Beaumont, Texas, I had done a yo-yo trick called walk the dog with a purple Duncan butterfly yo-yo. I'd walked the dog further than any other kid in my age group and won a mini bike when I was a kid. And I hadn't seen a yo-yo in 20 years. And this guy could barely make it go up and down. That's heartbreaking if you know how to do a yo-yo. So I went over to him, I said, man, where'd you get that yo-yo? He said, excuse me. I said, you got a purple Duncan butterfly. It's hard to come by. So I didn't know that. And I said, you can't even make it go up and down. Let me show you how to yo-yo. I said, can I play with your yo-yo? So we went out in the courtyard and I started doing around the worlds and rock the cradle and walk the dog. I mean, it was like riding a bike. He's going, holy moly. He says, I can't believe this. He says, that's amazing. I said, yeah. He says, my name's Bill. I said, nice to meet you. And he says, how you doing? And I said, well, I'm glad you asked. I said, I'm pathetic. You know, my ass is falling off and all these things. I said, you know that guy Irv? He says, everybody knows Irv. I said, well, I told him he didn't care. And he says, well, what'd you used to do? Guy gives me his business card. Make a long story short, I called him up that afternoon. I worked for him for the next 2.5 years, where I met my first writing partner and published my first book. And to this day, you know, it took me a year going back to that meeting for that guy with the yo-yo to remind me that it was because I had gone to put them ashtrays out. Now, I tell you, that's how this thing works. Every day of my life has got some gift from the fourth dimension in it. It's a dimension we don't understand. And it's really there. It's really there. There's so much magic in this thing. I hope you guys have a wonderful, safe weekend. I had a great time. I love this meeting. And it's meant so much to me. And thank you for having me. I had a fun time. Bye.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think. Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I don't not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with, and it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.